Now, in January of 2022, the BBC uploaded an article about how FPL players can get affected by poor mental health. Now, I don't claim to be an expert on the topic, I don't have any qualifications, but I do have some experience in dealing with the highs and lows of FPL and the things I've done to cope with the bad game weeks. And this video is all about sharing that with you. Now, the first piece of advice I've got is simply to have other hobbies. Now, certainly something I've done in the past is relied on basically fantasy football to fill a void in my life where I feel like other things could have come into play as well. And essentially what that does is it leads you to just having FPL completely consume you and basically controlling your entire mental state. You know, if you have a good or a bad weekend, that can completely control your mood. And really, you know, this might not speak to some of you. Some of you might have other hobbies you can turn to, and that's absolutely fine. But for those that don't, and really you're sort of hanging your hat solely on fantasy football, you need to have just other things going on in your life that you can turn to. I'm going to link in the description just a website that I've found. It basically lists over 1,000 different hobbies that you can try, right? Ultimately, when it comes to finding hobbies like I've done recently, you just got to try stuff and don't be afraid to do that. I think the whole, you know, discovery of new hobbies and stuff, it's about new experiences. You could meet new people, find things you don't like, that's fine. You just have to do it again. You can keep searching for those things that you do like. But quite simply, if you just focus on FPL, it really is going to consume you. You know, you have to look at other things to find happiness in life. And from my perspective, I'm a competitive swimmer. I go to the gym really regularly and I make these YouTube videos now. These videos are of course about FPL, so it's difficult to escape the world of FPL if you like when I make these videos, but I like to think this channel has not been built upon the fact that, well, whatever my rank history is, right, it's built upon the fact you enjoy watching my content in my videos rather than, you know, the fact I've attached it to having a good FPL rank. So yeah, that's tip number one, is just to have other hobbies. Next up, essentially not using Twitter. Now, I could get into a whole rant about social media, but in general, you know, social media is mainly about people just sharing the highlights. So when you have a good game week, you're probably going to tweet about it, or most people are anyway. And most of the game weeks that you see and screenshots of people's teams you see on Twitter are those that are good, because that's sort of what social media encourages, you know, sharing the highlights. No one's going to, well, unless they're joking about themselves and can take it on the chin, not many people are going to be sharing that they've had a bad game week and feeling under the weather. And just as a result, going on Twitter after a bad game week can just really amplify the feeling that you're sat out from the crowd. Like, everyone else has had a good game week, which means my rank is plummeting and I've had a bad game week. That's never true. Just also remember that every game week that goes by, other people are having bad game weeks too. Now, not that you should take solace from other people being upset as well, but simply remembering that you're not just the only person in the world that's had a bad game week. So yeah, essentially, you know, like I said, social media is all about sharing highlights, and when you've had a low light, probably best to stay away from it. Right, my next one, it doesn't matter. Like, genuinely, your rank and history in FPL is only minutely important to other people that play FPL. Last season, I think we had record numbers in the FPL game. 11 million people made a team in 22-23. I mean, genuinely, how many of those just quit after the first couple of game weeks as well? But there are 7 billion people on the planet. You know, it's such a small, you know, minute amount of population that play the game, and how many of those actually care about your rank history? How many of, you know, actually stay awake at night thinking about what your FPL rank is? No one does, right? More important things than FPL, for me at least, my family, my friends, and my relationships. So, you know, those things are what's really important in your life. You know, a game of moving shirts around on a computer screen, whilst, you know, I make YouTube videos about it and hoping to, you know, progress in that and whatever. Ultimately, I know what it's based upon. You know, it's based on a virtual game where you move shirts around on a screen and you score points based on how other people do in the game in real life. It's so just detached from like reality, and it doesn't matter. And I'm not saying it's not a good game and it's not fun, but in the grand scheme of things in life, it really doesn't matter. Right, a couple more things that I have been doing recently that not only has helped me, you know, deal with those bad game weeks in FPL, but genuinely just keep a good positive mental state as a whole. First one is keeping a journal. Now, this is, hang on, I'm just going to get out. This is mine. I'm not going to show you what's in it because it's secret to me, as it should be to you. But when I've had a bad day, I use this journal to write down and try to process my thoughts and feelings throughout that day. You know, the events that have happened that have led to me feeling this way, or quite simply, I could have woken up in a bit of a bad mood. And what I do is I treat my writing in the journal as basically having a conversation with a friend or just someone else. And it really helps you to just explore your feelings, where they've come from, and what you might be able to do to resolve them. I mean, I use it for many other things other than that, but in terms of FPL and mental state, that's something, you know, you can really use a journal for. And another one is meditation. Now, I don't know. I feel like I sound like a hippie or something like that, but please try and like remove your ego thinking you're too good for this or whatever, because ultimately it's something that's really helpful. You don't have to do anything fancy. You don't have to put your hands like this and sit cross-legged like the guy in the clip art there is doing. Simply, you've just got to sit somewhere that's nice and quiet and just focus on your breathing. You only need to do it for a couple of minutes. In fact, I'm not affiliated with them in any way, but there's an app on the App Store called Medito. I'll link in the description so you can find the app. But essentially, you can do a 3-minute meditation. A bloke, I can't remember what his name is, you'll have to go on the app to find it yourself. But he just talks you through what you need to do for 3 minutes, and you come away from those 3 minutes, you know, being aware of your thoughts and feelings and just having an ability to like disconnect from them. It really opens up a different aspect to like your whole mindset, which if you've not done it before or taken it seriously before, you might not be aware of. And quite simply, thoughts and feelings appear all the time, and it's, you know, down to you how you react to them, whether you take action based upon them or move them on or whatever, in terms of how you actually feel. And meditation really opens your eyes to that. And finally, I asked the FPL community on Twitter for some of their advice, and here is some of the tweets that they gave back to me. FPL Prem Tipster, my good mate, essentially talks about the point of having no control over the outcomes. You know, they're reliant on other blokes running around on a football pitch, scoring goals, getting assists in clean sheets. You can make decisions up to the deadline, but then everything else is completely out of your control. That should hopefully help put things into perspective a little bit. Also, just focusing on the next game week once the other game week's finished, right? You can't dwell on the past. It's important to look at the present and the future, because the present's all you can control and the decisions you make in the present, of course. And then with a view to the future as well, you know, in the future game weeks ahead, that's all you can plan for. Giving yourself, again, enough time to make decisions before the deadline, just making sure there's a bit less pressure on that final 5 minutes before the deadline. You know, if your team's already set and you know who you're going to captain, etc., made that decision already, it makes the game much easier. Who got the assist? Tom. Again, just makes my point around staying away from social media. You know, people are going to be sharing their high scores when you've had your bad game week, so staying away from that should help take away from some of those bad feelings. And also, if you're continually feeling terrible as a result of FPL, there's no shame in, to be honest, quitting the game entirely if it's really that bad, but taking prolonged breaks from the game if you really need to. I mean, if you took a week or two away from FPL and your team stayed the same, I don't think it's going to be the end of the world if, you know, you take a 2-week break and then you come back to your team. Dave Hannigan, he's just talking again about just being conscious basically about your thoughts and knowing, you know, your thoughts and feelings basically are interlined, and trying to be aware of what they are and trying to do your best to turn them into positives. And Ben Alden, not overthinking things, going with your first gut instincts can sometimes be the best decision. I mean, ultimately we get hung up on things that, you know, 50-50 calls between players. There's no difference between their stats and their like expected minutes and all that, and you've just got to make a decision. Sometimes removing that from your control and flipping a coin can be the best way to do it. Alright, and that's the end of the video. I don't think I've seen an FPL YouTuber talk about this kind of topic so far. It's not that that's a negative at all, but I just thought this might be a useful video to make, you know, for you to watch now in the pre-season, and also maybe during the season if you're having some issues. I hope it helps you. My DMs are, well, I actually need to open them because I find it really difficult to open my DMs in Twitter on the settings, but my DMs are going to be open when you're watching this video. You can always message me if you want any advice or tips in terms of mental health and FPL. I'll always be there to help you. If you enjoyed the video, please leave me a like rating and subscribe to the Golden Goal channel, which should be just there. And I'll catch you in the next one.